Hey guys, it's Dr. Bickling from Own It Dental. As always, here's my contact information if you need to get a hold of me. And if you guys are enjoying these videos, please do hit that like button. It's right down here, it's right down below, and it's super quick to do it. Speaking of super quick, today I'm going to teach you and your associates how to prepare multiple teeth super quick. So let's dig into it. All right, as I mentioned today, I'm going to go over some techniques and tips that you can use or you can use to teach your associates how to prepare multiple teeth super quick. I got the scrubs and the lab coat on, so we're going to get into some more clinical stuff today. In the past, I've talked about doing the 5-minute crown prep, and I'll post a link to that 5-minute crown prep up here. But how many of you guys have associate dentists that, even when they're doing one crown, it's taking them 2 or 3 hours or something like that just to get the crown done? What if they had to do like 8 or 10 or 20 or 28 crowns all at once? Imagine how long that would take. Well, if you give me 3 hours alone with a patient, I can probably prepare all 28 teeth in that one visit. And preparing the teeth might only take me a half an hour or something like that. So today I'm going to go into the tips and the tricks that I use to prepare multiple teeth very quickly. But before we dig into the tips and the tricks, first we're going to just do put some things in order. One of the first things I always do when preparing a case, whether it be cosmetic crowns, veneers, or something like that, if it's going to be on the anterior, I want to start with my gingival architecture. Let me just grab my pointer here. As you can see, this gingival architecture is all over the place. The canines, the crest of the gingiva is way down low here. The lateral's taller than that. The centrals don't look too bad, but this gingival architecture is just all over the place. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get our gums lined up as close as possible to where we'd like them to be. So let's just dig into this. There we go. So here's a more ideal case. If you just do some gingivectomies, you can get those canines lined up. Ideally, you want the crest of the gingiva here, the height of contour of the canines in line with your centrals, and your laterals maybe a ½ millimeter to 1 millimeter shorter than that. So first thing we want to do is just get our gingival architecture all lined up. But you have to, or as close to it as possible, because you do have to decide, can you even get them there? So here's a case that I did quite a few years ago, and what do you do about this gingiva? Can you get that gingiva lined up? Well, we can get it pretty close, so let's see what our limitations are. So we got to find out our limitations. So the first thing I do is when the patient's numb, I take my periodontal probe and I sound to the crest of the bone. And you can see here that probe is measuring at about 4 millimeters. So we know we need a couple of millimeters, a millimeter or two for the attached tissue. And then we need at least another millimeter for a natural healthy sulcus. And that 2 to 3 millimeters will give us our biological width. So I could probably safely do a gingivectomy and remove at least 1 millimeter of tissue without invading that biological width, at least on this tooth. And you're going to want to go through tooth by tooth to see what your limitations are. So again, I sound to the crest of the bone. I leave at least 2 to 3 millimeters, probably closer to 3 for my biological width. And then I can do my recontouring. And as you can see here, we use a laser here just to kind of get our centrals lined up, our laterals lined up as best as we can. And if at all possible, we get these centrals at the same level as the canines. So that's just step one. Again, this isn't the speed thing yet. This is just how I kind of prepare things in advance. Now we're going to start getting into the veneer preparation. And here's an ideal veneer prep. I stole this from my LVI workbook, and you can read through that as much as you want, but I'm actually going to ignore it because how many veneers do you do on ideal teeth? We always talk about this ideal veneer prep, but I've almost never had an ideal tooth that needed a veneer. So, in many cases, the teeth are either too far forward, they're too far palatal, they're rotated, they're discolored. And in all of those situations, you're not going to do an ideal veneer prep. You're going to prepare the tooth as it needs to hide whatever the defect is or cover over whatever the defect is of that tooth. In some cases, you're going to be preparing more on the lingual than you will on the facial. So, when I look at the ideal veneer prep, I go, yeah, that's nice. And then I throw it out the window because I have to deal with the tooth in front of me. One of the things that I try to teach my doctors when I'm teaching them how to do large cases is when you're preparing the teeth, prepare them where you want them to be, not where they are. What do we mean by that? Well, first is you want to put your ducks in a row, or you want to get your teeth straightened, okay? And so let's go back to this case right here, and we want to put our ducks in a row. We want to get everything in line. And what I mean by that is anything that's above the occlusal plane, we want to shorten. We want to lop it off. Anything that's in front of our natural dental arch, we want to bring that back. And anything that's too far lingual in our dental arch, we want to try to bring that forward. So what does that look like? On a case like this, I might lop off the incisal edges of these teeth to try to get them in line. You can see that this canine is a little bit too far to the facial, so I'm going to reduce the facial and bring it back into the arch form. And then these three are too far lingual, and I'm going to probably reduce the linguals of them to bring the linguals in line with the rest of the arch form. So what does that look like in real life? It looks like this. You can see that I've lopped off the occlusal or the incisal edges to get all the incisal edges lined up. This canine, I've reduced the facial to get it lined up with the arch form the best I can. And these incisors here, I've reduced the lingual to get the linguals lined up with the arch form the best I can. As well as you can see, I did my gingivectomies here to try to get the gingival contour as much as I could without invading the biological width. So that looks a lot better. Now we can start preparing the teeth. All right, so we haven't even gotten to the preparing the teeth part. The first step is to get your gingiva lined up. Second step is to get your teeth lined up. Now we can start preparing the teeth. And here comes the big time-saving secret. When you're preparing the teeth, don't prepare one tooth at a time. Prepare one surface at a time. This is where doctors who do big cases they spend too much time just preparing one tooth and then the next and the next and the next. So I'm going to tell you, don't prepare one tooth at a time, prepare one surface at a time. And we use the same principles that we do with the 5-minute crown prep, except we're just dealing with multiple teeth. And so what does that look like? So let's say I'm doing my depth cuts first. Now I'm preparing my teeth. I just do all my depth cuts on the buccal. I just go straight across and do my depth cuts. I treat the whole area as if it's one big tooth. So I go right across the buccal, and then I go over to the lingual, and then I do all my depth cuts on the lingual, and I come right back across this way. So I'm using my depth cutting burr. I'm doing one surface at a time, and I'm going across all the buccals and all the linguals. Now I'm done with that depth cutting burr. I can take it off, I can put it to the side, and I never have to use it again. Now the next step is, well, if I have any more occlusal reduction, I'm going to go ahead and do my occlusal reduction. I'm going to do it just straight across, all the way across. Then maybe I'll do my interproximal reduction. And I'm just going to go straight across, right between there, right between there, right between there, all the way across. Now maybe I'll do my gross reduction on the facials, and I'll just come from one tooth over to the next, to the next, to the next. Then I'll swing around to the linguals, and I'll come back across here. Again, I'm using one burr at a time, and when I'm done with that burr, I set it aside and never touch it again. Then maybe I'll come in with some type of a finishing burr, either for my chamfer or for my shoulder, and I'll do the fine detail work and come around and get my margins just the way I want them. Okay, so the way that you do multiple teeth quickly is you don't prepare one tooth at a time, you prepare one surface at a time. Okay, and this was the end result. On this patient, I ended up having to do more of cosmetic crowns rather than veneers because there were some teeth that I had to reduce more on the lingual than others. So you can see this was the end result. Unfortunately, I don't have the photos of the crowns that went on there, but you can see that there's plenty of room, got everything lined up, and this case is going to turn out just fine. So got our gingival architecture looking good, the teeth are all lined up, much better result than it was before once we put the crowns on it. So again, in review, the first steps that you do is when you're designing the case, get your gums lined up first. Then get your teeth lined up first. Then you can prepare your teeth. Prepare one surface at a time as opposed to one tooth at a time. Use one burr until you're done with it, and then never touch that burr again. As long as you get that in your head, you're going to realize that I got to get this burr done, and I'm not touching it again. Go from your gross reduction to your fine tuning, so do all of your gross reduction as quickly as possible on one surface at a time, and then save those details for last. And that way you and your associates can prepare multiple teeth in almost no additional time than it takes just to prepare one. We're just using the same principles, but instead of preparing one tooth at a time, we're preparing one surface at a time. So again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll try to put out some more of these clinical tips and tricks that you can use, or you can teach your associates to use, that will not only save you time, but have you do good quality dentistry at the same time. Again, I'm Dr. Bickling. Here's my contact information, and I'll see you on the next video. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content like it, go to ownitdental.com or click the link above and check out my services. I have dozens of hours of training videos and have negotiated reduced lab fees for all my clients. So if you want to get out of the dental chair and start owning your business, go to ownitdental.com and check out my services, and I'll see you soon.